Hi guys, my name is Daniel Solis. Most of you know me. We're from Reptile Avenue.
John Cashman, so from Reptile Avenue, Daniel.
We work together. We pretty much been breeding for a while. We work with ball pythons, reticulated pythons, bull snakes, king snakes, blood pythons, boas. So we have a few different things, but we focus mainly on ball pythons and reticulated pythons. So today we brought in a few animals, so you can later on, once we're done talking, you can come check them out. We've got some bigger stuff. If you guys, anyone wants to hold them and check them out, you're more than welcome to come later on. Once we're done talking, you can come and check them out. Basically, just a little bit of basic info on the retics. The retics, reticulated pythons, it's pretty much the largest snake in the world. Some of the bigger boas and some of the bigger other pythons, like the Burmese python and the anacondas, they can be the heaviest. It doesn't happen as often. Most of the time you'll find retics being the longest and the heaviest. It's definitely not a first-time pet. I wouldn't suggest keeping one as a first-time pet. They do require, I would say, advanced knowledge. Definitely a more experienced snake. Other than that, once you get them, once you work with them for a period of time and get to know the animal, you can pretty much understand the way they eat, the way they move, and basically you're pretty much graduated. There's really, to me, now there's snake out there, non-venomous, as the reticulated pythons. The retics are from the Philippines. They're from Southeast Asia. You can find them in pretty much any island in that area. The mainland retics from the Philippines, those are the bigger girls, the bigger animals that everybody talks about being 30 feet. But usually, the biggest retics that are out there in measure only max out at about 24 feet, 25. In captivity here in the States, I would say the average size of a retic, it's right about 17 feet. So, anybody saying, oh yeah, they grow, one of the first things that I get from customers is, oh yeah, I can't afford it, or oh yeah, it's just too big for me, they grow 30 feet, and that's a misunderstanding. There's really no evidence on any retic being over 30 feet, at least not in the recent years. So that's one of the points that I wanted to make out to you guys, especially if you don't work with retics. That's one of the big misunderstandings. Usually, the average size for a big female, and that's an 8, maybe 10-year-old female, is right about 17 feet. They can grow bigger. They can reach size of over 20 feet long, but it's not the standard. Males stay a little smaller. In fact, we have a male that's only 7 feet long, and it's already a proven breeder. And 7 feet long, it's a little smaller than this thing. That's size-wise. But again, they do have the potential to grow big. It has to do with the feeding, the way you keep them, temperature, and even genetics. Some of the smaller retics that we call dwarf or super dwarf are from the smaller islands near the Philippines. There's a few localities that we call. They usually stay a little smaller. Females usually max out about 12 to 14 feet. Males right about 6. And there's the super dwarf, which nowadays they have been bred to become even smaller. The super dwarf retics, they usually max out about 9, 8 feet, male and female, and that's very manageable. But the upside down on that is they're a little more aggressive, and actually very aggressive. I was going to bring one to show, but it just wouldn't even let me get it out of the cage. It's not a standard. There's some that are more manageable. They're becoming popular because of the size, but then again, you have a smaller snake that's a little more aggressive. It varies though. I mean, one of my girls, it's crazy. It will just go out and try to bite. That's the size. On the retic world, we have bigger animals, you know, that definitely grow over 20 feet, and the super dwarf stuff that stays smaller, in the 8 feet, 7 feet range. That's the size, I guess. Temperament, the bigger animals, even on the berms or some of the bigger anacondas, the bigger they are, they mellow down because of the size. It takes a lot of energy to strike or to move fast. So usually the bigger animals tend to be a little calmer. But then again, it varies because you still have to be able to read the animal, the body language has to, you really have to keep an eye on that. You know, one of the retics that we have, before you go in the cage, you have to look at the eyes. If they're open, dilated, it means that you shouldn't get near. It means that it's getting all the info that it can. It's either in feeding mode or it just doesn't want to be handled. That's some of the things that people that keep smaller animals, smaller snakes, ball pythons, boas, some of the colubrids don't realize on the bigger animals, and that's when we have you know, those pictures where people show a big snake around their arms and bleeding all over the place. It's because of the lack of experience on that animal. It's definitely something that I wouldn't recommend to a beginner. Knowing the animal, you know, knowing the animal that you work with it's one of the big things that I would recommend. Definitely read the animal, especially the males. The males, when they're reach the breeding size, they can become very, very territorial, and if you go in a cage and you know, try to pull them out to either change the bedding or change the water, you gotta be careful. These males, very little things. If you start pushing against them, that's usually a sign when males are in breeding mode, they tend to fight each other. And by pushing each other, the dominant male can actually go off with the female. So if you go in and grab them and start wrestling with them, that in his mind, it's a sign of a male, another male trying to be a combat for a female, and he can actually turn around and bite. And most people don't realize that, and that's when they get a male that's.
So those are the worst bites from an aggressive male. One that wants to breed. It's not a bite where it's like food that go. It's bite to seriously injure something. So because they will bite each other when they come back. They will try to kill each other.
Yeah, male. I mean, the Reticulated Pythons, they have over 100 teeth. So it's a pretty nasty bite, but then again, that goes to knowing your animal, knowing when you're able to go in the cage, and when you're able to pull them out. Another way to read the body language, or to know when to handle an animal like this, like the retics, especially when they're big, it's when feeding. Usually, even if they have a big prey item and they eat it, they will still be on a feeding mode for the next 3-4 hours. And even if they're full, they're still in the feeding mode, and you cannot go in again and try to pull them out or do anything else, because it will strike. And that's one of the big problems that we have with the retics, because most people think, oh, it's an aggressive animal. But most of those signs of aggression, it's
very strong feeding response.
It's a feeding response that gets misunderstood and by aggression, and it's not. It's mostly a good feeding response. That's why the animal is so big. It's because it feeds well and it has a very fast metabolism. A retic can actually eat every day if you need it, and it will digest the food and it wouldn't hurt its growth. It's not recommended. We don't feed them every day. In the wild, they don't feed every day, but it's an animal that can take it. Almost like the little hognoses. They have a very fast metabolism, and they keep on eating, and that's how they're able to grow that big. Also, another thing about on keeping retic and keeping larger snakes is have the room. Some of the issues that I've seen from other people where they get beat or they get a snake coming out and trying to bite them is it's very little room to work around the cage. I've actually seen a few facilities where you have a cage right here and another cage right here. And it's really hard to move around. And you gotta understand when you have a 10-footer, he can come out 5 feet easily in less than a second just at you, and there's no way to get out of the way. So little things like that, it's always good to keep in mind when keeping retics. It's basically a lot of research. To me, my own experience, it took me, I would say, I haven't stopped learning about them for the past 5-6 years. You know, from reading the body language, from understanding the feeding response, and the breeding, every year I learn, you know, different things about them, and it's definitely a retic, not for a beginner. Other than that, as a pet to start with, I wouldn't recommend that after you've handled bigger animals like boas or bigger pythons, even Roma pythons that can grow 6 feet. Let's see. What else you want to add on that?
Final questions?
Well, okay. Well, I was just trying to give you a basic talk on them. We haven't gotten into what we do, which is morph and different color mutations. I just wanted to leave that for the end, so you guys can even come and check them out. And I'll explain that as I show you some of the color mutations that we have. Basically, within the last, I would say, 5 years, it has been a boom of mutations in morph in the retic world. I would say it's very close to the ball python morph. If you know what's happening with the ball python, we have basically any pattern in any color change in ball pythons, and retics are very close next. There's so many combinations and so many different pattern and color mutations. It's getting very, very large, and we're able to produce pretty much any color you guys can imagine on retics. And that's what we basically specialize on, just breeding out different combos, different mutation, color-wise, pattern-wise, and it does well for us. Basically, this is what I do for a living. I live out of my reptiles. I breed them, I sell them, and do the shows. And I never done a presentation, so sorry if I'm a little slow and but for the next year, we were actually thinking that we both might be able to live out of the reptiles. He's currently working, but it's looking like next year we might be able to do it fully out of the retics, out of the ball pythons, which is pretty cool, man. If you ask me, that's the best job that I can have. Actually, when I was looking for a job a couple of years back, couldn't get hired. Well, I did, but nothing that I really wanted to do. And now that I'm doing the reptiles, I get offers, and pretty good offers. But you know, the time that I can spend and work with the animal, it's so much valuable. Even if I don't make as much money out of them, just being able to work, especially with the retics. To me, it's one of the most rewarding snakes that you can have. The retics, because it's such an advanced snake, and it gives you a sense of pride being able to work with these animals. But I'm happy that I'm able to work with them and make a living out of them, pay all my bills. There's basically no debt. And as far as that goes, maybe next year we'll both be able to do it full time. And that's thanks to the retics, thanks to the ball pythons that we breed. Let's see. I think that covers some of the basics, maybe the size and the temperament on some of the retics. Maybe if you guys have any questions about that, maybe if I wasn't clear on any of that, maybe this is the time to let me know before we move on to the genetics, because it gets complicated once we talk about the different morph that we have on the retics. So before we move into that, if you guys have any questions, maybe the size or want to know more about the retics in general, we can start now and, you know, if you need to ask something. Yes?
I'm just curious about the ones that you're selling. Are they pretty much now maybe almost 100% captive bred? Or do you still see them shipped in, from, like wild caught shipped in, or do those countries block? Is it illegal to?
There's still some shipped from Indonesia. Most of you see those all captive born. There's really no reason to.
Okay.
I mean, they have large numbers. I mean, our average retic clutch average from, say, a small clutch would be 15 up to 40, 50 babies.
It's very sustainable. It's not a snake that's popular and that we have to chip in 5,000, 50,000 snakes like ball pythons do. There's a huge numbers of ball pythons being brought in, especially the normals. And there's a bigger number being produced out of private breeders. The retics is very sustainable. There's only a couple of people in the business that are bringing them in more because of bringing new blood in and sometimes there's a new morph out there, a new color that we don't have in the States, so they get brought in because of that. But it's not a retic that has suffered a big loss because of the pet trade. However, they are I wouldn't say endangered, but there is a huge demand for their skin. And it's totally unrelated to the pet trade. And they are being hunted down by the thousands because it's a large snake, and if you get a skin out of them, you can produce, I guess, boots and belts, and there is a big issue going on about that. But there, as far as pet, it doesn't suffer in the wild. As far as pet trade, we produce enough to go around.
And the only thing you mostly see a lot now, if anything walks hot, is the locales now, because a lot of people, they bred everything in the morph, so the locales kind of got lost. So a lot of people are out trying to bring just to breed for certain locales.
Yeah, what the locales do is, when we talk about locales, it's a specific
either specific island
or a region where this group of retic develop a different pattern or a different size, and that becomes valuable because we don't have it here, and therefore it gets shipped over, but not in massive quantities like ball pythons or any of the other imports. And that's the only time we get them brought in wild caught. It's for that specific island where it's in a specific pattern that we want, and it gets brought in. But the size on that, it's very small numbers. It doesn't affect it at all. I would say the bigger issue there will be the people who are buying the skin and the meat for food. That happens a lot in Indonesia and Southeast Asia, all the countries that they're from. But yeah, most of them that we have, it's all captive bred, and it's been captive bred for the past 5-10 years. Any other questions? Yes.
As far as keeping one for pet, the males stay smaller, but you mentioned that they get kind of aggressive. What's the reach maturity?
Yes.
Is that during a certain time of year, like breeding?
Yes. If you're only keeping a male by itself, it tends to stay a little. It's a little easier.
Yeah, it doesn't smell a female. A lot of times if they smell a female, you probably wouldn't have any issues.
Yeah.
Because I've had the tamest retics, my first albino retic when I first started breeding, and he was super tame. But as soon as the female became ready, he was a different snake. I could take him out, and he'd turn around and try to bite me. And any other time, I could take him out in public, anybody could handle him, he was fine. It's just they smell the pheromones or whatever.
Something like that?
Yeah, they can smell when the female's ready, and that's what causes it. And especially if they smell another male, that's when you can tell, because they start arching their backs and they start pushing on you, and then if that doesn't work, they try to bite.
Would other species of pythons being kept in the same room cause that kind of response?
I only keep retics, and I keep some retics here, but I guess it probably could. I've never
I would say it might be possible because there is a hybrid, very popular hybrid, which is the Burm and the body here, which is the Burmese and the retic. And that means they're compatible. They produce viable babies, and the babies actually, they're fertile, not unlike some of the hybrids that they're not. So that might be a possibility. I don't know for experience, but I think there is a chance that if you have a male Burm and a male retic, and they're in breeding size, and during the breeding season, that could possibly be a factor there. But in general, males stay smaller. There's really no difference in temperament. It's not sex linked. If you work with a male since small, you can have it very manageable. But if you're only keeping a male, I wouldn't see why he will turn aggressive once he breeds.
You just have to watch him and see even if you had another snake. You can kind of tell right away when you go in there and touch him, the first response is he'll push. That's usually what they do. They arch up and they push back. And then if you know he's doing that, and it's not like sometimes they'll go like that. No, they'll let you know they're trying to push you away.
Yeah, it's a very neat experience to see that. The first time that it happened to me, I couldn't believe the strength of the animal to be able to push you back. If you're standing up and you were pushing against it, it will push you back. It's a very strong animal. But once you see that type of reaction, it's the time to just let it rest. And that's what I mean when you have to become more knowledgeable about them. It's not like ball pythons that you can just go from behind and pick them up and they relax after a while.
Yeah, but ball python bite is no big deal.
For retics, it's a little more behind the bite, so therefore we're more careful. It needs to be treated with respect, being one of the biggest snake in the world.
How large a container do you use?
For a big side female?
For an adult male.
For an adult male, we keep them in.
The 4-foot vision is usually big enough for an adult male, unless you have an extremely large male. I've only seen a few extremely large, but most of them, my breeders are between 9 and 10 feet. Some are a little less. I just do the 4-foot by 28 visions, and they seem because they're not giant animals. They're only probably that big around, so it's not like it's a huge snake. So they seem to do pretty well in those.
Yeah, a bigger female. We have
the females that keep
the bigger 8.
The Neodisha, the 8 by 30 inch, and then the 6 by 36 visions. That's what I use.
Yeah, as hatchlings, as babies like this, most of them we keep them in small tubs. The snake racks, they're the B18s, vision racks. They're only about this big, and they seem to be doing well there for at least 2-3 months. They grow fast, especially the first 2 years. They seem to pack the weight there and the size. After that, they get switched over to a 29-40 tub. And usually within the first year, a female can reach 6 feet. And that's pretty large. I actually brought some yearlings so you can see the difference of a big retican versus other snakes. I'll show you those later.
And even some of the super core stuff, you can actually keep them in like your ball python CB70 tubs that fit inside like that. They'll live their whole life in there. 7, 8-foot retic is not very big when it's the size of like a normal python.
Yes. Any other questions?
What do you think one of the most docile morphs is? Because remember back in the day, it was like the tiger when Jay was producing 9 million tigers a year. And so tiger's still one of the most.
I say tigers, yeah, they're pretty mellow. Some of the motley stuff I haven't seen any really mean motleys yet.
Really?
They seem to be pretty good, but they seem to be kind of dumb too.
Yeah, I was going to say that. The reason why they're male is because they're a little old. They don't seem to react fast.
Ball python motley retic. Which way do I go?
So I mean, I've actually lost a male motley because my female was on top of him and he refused to get out from underneath her, and she actually smushed him. Because he wasn't smart enough, and a friend of mine's actually lost 2 male motleys because of the same thing. He says they're stupid, they refuse to move.
But that's what I mean when it takes an advanced keeper to actually breed these guys and have them as a large collection, because things like that, I didn't know. Wow.
Golden Child seem to be pretty tame. I have one girl. I think something's wrong with her though. Sometimes she's good, and then sometimes she's not. I don't know.
Yeah, we had a 17-foot tiger at one of the shows that was pretty good, I think if I remember right?
I thought that was a piece of glass.
I got cut by the vision glass, but she was great. I mean, I don't know, I wrestled her around for a while. So,
she was great once you got her outside and let her stretch her legs.
Yeah, that female, see,
I'd say one of the morphs though that does seem to be a little more aggressive. It seems like some of the platinum stuff. Because I had a clutch with from titanium stuff, and it seems like all the stuff that's non-platinum is docile. All the stuff, the platinum stuff, wants to kill you. So
it's kind of like that cinnamon gene in the balls too, right?
yeah, it could possibly be like that, but it changes the ivory, which is the super form of the platinum. It's not as aggressive. It seems to be not as any other retic, and it's just the super form of a platinum. And even as babies, they seem to be.
It's not all that way, but it just seems like from this year that clutch you need, but like the granite back platinum stuff, the tigers, they seem fine.
And I had an albino lavender super dwarf that was just a puppy dog male too, but they told me if it was a female, I'd have lost my head, but he was just a
But a lot of the super dwarfs, they just seem more flighty. They want to get away more, and they just don't. I don't know.
pretty cool.
More active, I guess.
Yeah, they'll have metabolism, don't they?
Well, most of the retics have a real high metabolism. I mean, you feed them, and like if you get a big lump, say you feed them a large meal, like a couple days, it'll look like you eat anything. And the more you feed them, the more you're going to clean. It's like if you ever kept hognose, it's the same thing. The more they eat, the more they defecate, the more you're going to be cleaning.
So you suggest a male over female?
If you want to start working where it takes, to start with a male, just size because of the size.
Well, it also means too if you want to get into breeding, or if you want to get into just to keep a pet, you probably want to go with the male. If you think maybe down the line get a female, because I don't know anybody yet that's really gotten a female to breed at under 3 years of age. It's not like a ball python where you can push it and breed at 18 months. I've heard a few people got to go at 2.5, but that was the earliest.
As a pet, I would suggest, a male as well. I think size-wise, it's very manageable to get one going. And if you don't have any other bigger retics than another male or female, you should be okay. Especially if you get as a baby and you work with it. I don't see any issue. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be like that the whole time. As they can turn really easily. Like I said, if you don't. If you go in the cage, you open the cage right away, the snake has the eyes wide open, and looking for food.
That's I think the most common mistake people make. As soon as they open the cage, they reach in to grab their pet. Well, that snake thinks, regardless of what you do, it thinks my cage is open, there's food coming. So the first thing that comes in there, it's going to grab it. And that's why I think a lot of people get bit, and they get oh, my snake's mean. And it's not mean, it's just a natural reaction from the animal. Yeah, and it also with the retics, I mean, these animals, when they're small, we feed them more, but after, I say, a year or two, when they get some size on them, you can get away with feeding them once every couple of weeks at a large meal. They don't need to eat a lot. Especially if you're not going to breed them, you're just going to eat them for a pet. Just when they're small, you need to give them, more nourishment, but as they reach a certain size and it gets maturity, they don't need to eat as much.
Lots of rabbits.
Yeah. The females like rabbits.
Yes.
Just for interest, some of what you described with that, as far as pushing and things like that, Momo pythons do that too.
Oh, they do that as
Almost have a
well?
very high
The
metabolism
difference
too.
is that you've got a snake that's, 1/4 the weight and size, and it's not as noticeable. And also with the Barron's racers, I found that with if you put a couple of males together, they'll push like that, and they'll actually get nibby, at breeding season.
Yeah, I've actually
So
had.
I think it's universal. It's just that the bigger snakes, it's more
Yeah,
obvious.
it's just more noticeable.
Yeah, the ball pythons do it. Some of my king actually put a group together, and it seems to spark the breeding response as well. It's just like you said, the size difference is huge. When you get a retic male to push against you, it's really a whole different feeling from any other snake that I've seen. It's something, just basically if somebody else is pushing against you. And but that's usually when you have males breeding, there's females in the room, and it's breeding season, which is when you really see it. Other than that, just as pet, we know other males or any other smell around them, they're usually fine. Any other questions? All right, let's move on to the morph that we work with. So like I said, the retics, they have a huge, nowadays the list has become huge. There's so many combos, there's so many mutations. It's becoming really hard to keep up with. It's almost like the ball pythons, to be honest. And that's becoming very popular with them. That's one of the reasons. The other reason, like I said before, it's being one of the top snakes to keep. It's one of the other reasons why they have become popular. As far as the mutations that we work with, there's anything from albinos, different lines of albinos, different color mutations, like golden childs and even the motleys. There's pattern mutations like the motleys, tigers, even platinum sunfire does a lot of the pattern mutation on them too as well. And we brought some of the animals to show. If you guys, maybe it might be time. So if you guys want to come in closer, I'll bring some of the bigger snakes out. They're very good. You can handle them too. I don't know if you ever experienced a bigger animal like that. I'll bring those out so you can see them. You can come take a closer look at the morph. I'll explain a little better what they are and what we do to cross them and how we can distinguish what they are. And I'll show you some more stuff if you want to step over, and I'll show you more stuff. And I brought this girl to show basically what more of like the classic pattern.
That's what I was picking up a while ago.
And she's
one
pretty
that wrapped around my arm.
cool. This is what basically the classic pattern looks like. There's no other morph in it. And I brought it so you can see the big difference between this and the sunfires and the albinos, the motleys. So you can see how far they have come.
She wrapped completely around my arm earlier.
Yeah, this girl is very nice. I had her since out of the egg, and it's a normal. Usually we don't keep normals just because of the size and the caging. But this girl has been very, very mellow since day one. So even if I open the cage, she comes out and she's friendly. This is a year-old.
Like a lot of people have seen albino Burmese as they grow, they yellow out, and you really can't see a pattern or anything. These just get better. The orange gets brighter, the purple gets a little darker.
It's got a pattern on the back too.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
And they got little rosettes on the sides of them. Some don't have any. Some are like this, where it's patternless.
What's the biggest one that you guys own?
It's about 18 feet.
18 feet.
Yeah.
Does it mean it's out?
No, she's actually very
What's that
nice.
one called?
That's a purple golden child.
Yeah,
it's actually two.
albino
It's
golden
a line of albinos and a golden child. The golden childs are actually a dark morph, but the albino makes it very orange.
It's pretty.
Yeah, like what he was saying on the bigger retics, and they keep the pattern, and that's what's awesome about it. I'll show you this girl. She won't lose the color, and she won't lose that pattern. Unlike some of the fighters or some of the terms, as they get older, they just become a yellow snake and no pattern, and basically it's just one color. That's what neat about them. You know, you'll expect to see these as they grow.
Yeah, and on her, the yellow gets brighter. Her head will get white, like the back here, as she gets older.
Now, what I was saying size-wise, this is a female about a year old, a little over a year old. It's 2012, so you can see the growth, and you can see why you need a bigger cage for the female. But the neat thing is, once you get a female or a male this size, you can slow down on the feeding, and you can actually keep them under control. If you feed every 10 days...
You could take a picture of her and she's frozen for his picture.
This size, what would it be?
Large rats. It could eat jumbo rats.
When it's grown, you're feeding it once a week.
You can also switch them over to smaller rabbits at this size.
Try to do once every 5 days. Some of them get fed a little more often, but basically what we do is once every 5 days. When there's that size.
And do you raise your own?
No, we buy, and the deal is pretty high.
Boy, she's sure still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't get over how docile they are.
Yeah. But like again, this female we've been working with her for a while.
Like the tigers. So, the retics, I mean, the tigers here, the golden childs are nice.
Wild caught. Nobody was breeding them.
The main thing is,
I mean, they were huge. And then now I see the
price
such a different attitude. Completely different than what I used to
Yeah, most of them need live, and on these guys it just gets stronger, and the color is just awesome. It's okay.
Sometimes I see people selling super dwarfs, but I don't know what to do. Is there a way to tell without seeing the past?
No, there's not. Usually that's when some of the names come in handy. The bigger guys, the bigger names that have been in the business that are well known, usually have the purest super dwarf and dwarf animals, and usually that's what I try to go with if I'm ever looking for any super dwarf, at least pure super dwarf. Super dwarf, what it is, it's an island, it's a location which has more retics in the world. Still, a small retic, this is considered a small retic. So even a super dwarf female has the potential to grow this big.